I still remember the way the dining room glowed that night, soft golden light bouncing off polished crystal, my husband Adrian carving the roast he'd bragged about all week, our 10-year-old son laughing as he tried to sneak extra mashed potatoes onto his plate. For a moment, the world felt perfectly aligned. Our family's annual founders' dinner always had that effect: tradition, stability, unity. The three pillars Adrian's family loved to parade in front of guests. Then I saw the envelope. It was small, cream-colored, tucked halfway under Adrian's dessert plate. At first I thought it was some fancy place card, but it was too stiff, too deliberately hidden. And the corner was torn, ripped in a way that didn't match anything decorative. I wouldn't have stared twice if Adrian hadn't noticed me noticing. He rested his knife on the carving board, looked straight into my eyes with that quick, smug twitch of a smile he used when he thought he had the upper hand. "Don't worry about that," he said lightly, nudging the envelope further under his plate with his thumb. "Tonight's not about business. Let's just enjoy ourselves." Across the table, his mother, Moira, gave me a tight, performative smile, the kind she put on when warning me to behave without saying a word. And his brother, Evan, glanced away so fast it practically screamed guilt. My stomach tightened. Something in that envelope wasn't meant for me, at least not yet. But that wasn't the real crack. The real crack was the bruise. A faint, oval mark on our son's wrist as he reached across the table. I froze. It wasn't there yesterday. It wasn't from sports, he hadn't practiced since Tuesday. It was fresh. He saw my expression and instinctively tugged his sleeve down. Adrian caught that too. "It's nothing," Adrian said with that same smug calm, carving into the roast again. "Some kids just bruise easily, right?" He didn't look at our son when he said it. He looked at me. Like he was daring me to question him in front of his family. The air thickened instantly. Moira tapped her spoon on her glass, once, twice, an old signal for someone to stop talking. "Let's not create drama," she murmured. "We have guests, and we don't need unnecessary concerns floating around." Unnecessary concerns. My child's wrist. A hidden envelope. My husband's smirk. The evening kept moving as if nothing had happened, but I couldn't shake the cold certainty crawling up my spine. Something had shifted. Something big. And every nervous glance between Adrian and his brother only made the room feel smaller. Halfway through dessert, I leaned close to my son, pretending to pass him the whipped cream. "Sweetheart, what happened to your wrist?" I whispered. He shook his head quickly. "Dad said not to talk about it." Not to talk about it. That was the pinpoint moment my heart hardened. I looked up and found Adrian watching me again, his expression mild, controlled. He raised his wineglass toward me in a silent toast, as if sealing some invisible victory. I didn't return it. I smiled instead. Slowly. The kind of smile that always made him uneasy because he could never tell what I was thinking when I used it. I let that smile linger just long enough to see a flicker of doubt in his eyes. That flicker told me everything. I lowered my voice and continued eating. "Fine," I murmured to myself. "We'll play it your way. For now." But inside I was already drawing the lines. I knew the envelope mattered. I knew the bruise mattered. And I knew, with chilling clarity, that whatever Adrian and his family were planning, it involved me, my son, and something they were terrified I'd discover too soon. And now I want to ask you, yes, you watching this, because maybe you've been here in some way. Have you ever felt that instant shift at a family gathering, where everyone smiles but someone's hiding something from you? What was the moment that tipped you off, and how did you confirm your instincts? Tell me in the comments, because I need to know how others cracked moments like this wide open. As the dinner carried on, Adrian slid the envelope into his jacket pocket. Moira began talking loudly about family unity, legacy, and loyalty, her usual sermon whenever she sensed I was thinking too independently. Evan wouldn't meet my eye at all. The room felt staged. Choreographed. Except for the bruise on my son's wrist. That was real. And when the dessert plates were cleared, Adrian said something that iced the entire night. "Tomorrow morning, I need you to sign a few documents," he whispered, brushing past me as he stood. "Nothing complicated. We'll talk." I didn't answer him. Because by then, my course was already set. And I had no intention of signing anything without uncovering every secret they thought they could bury. 1 week earlier, none of this was on my radar. It was just a Wednesday morning, quiet, predictable, the kind of day where my biggest concern should have been whether my coffee machine was finally giving out. I was at the office early, reviewing quarterly projections for the retail branch Adrian's family owned. I'd managed operations for nearly 6 years, and despite Moira's constant attempts to paint me as just Adrian's wife, I had earned every ounce of influence I held. That morning, however, I noticed a pattern I'd overlooked before. Adrian had been leaving the house earlier than usual. Not suspicious on its own, he often had meetings. But he'd stopped telling me where he was going. And he'd become strangely protective of his phone, keeping it flipped face down, never letting it out of his reach. He claimed increased workload, supplier negotiations, cost adjustments, nothing that made sense given I oversaw all supplier contracts myself. I told myself I wasn't going to assume the worst. I'd learned long ago that reacting too early only gave people extra room to lie more convincingly. So I waited, watching, gathering quiet details. But the first real seed arrived that Wednesday. I'd swung by the family warehouse to resolve a clerical discrepancy. The moment I stepped into the corridor, I heard voices, Adrian's and Moira's, behind the half-open conference room door. I almost kept moving, but then I caught 3 words from Adrian that froze me in place. "Before she finds out." His voice was low, tense. If he'd been talking about an employee, a vendor, anything normal, he would have been blunt, casual. But he wasn't casual. He sounded like someone hiding something that could detonate if exposed too soon. Moira's reply came next, clipped and disapproving. "You should have handled it already. We can't afford another delay. And do not let her sniff around the finances again." I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. Again. As if I'd already been close to uncovering something. Something they desperately didn't want me to see. I wasn't foolish enough to step closer. Instead, I pivoted soundlessly and walked down the corridor, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. I didn't know what it was, yet, but the intention was clear. They were orchestrating something. Together. And they were afraid I'd disrupt it. That alone told me it had to be big. Later that afternoon, I returned home early, hoping to catch Adrian before he disappeared again. Instead, I found Evan standing in my kitchen rummaging through the mail. He jumped the moment he saw me. "Oh, hey," he stammered, stuffing a thick envelope back into the pile. "Adrian asked me to drop something off." "Then drop it off," I replied calmly. "Not sort through my mail." He blushed, muttered something about helping, and rushed past me out the door. But not before I noticed the return address on the envelope he'd been holding, our family attorney's office. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to, not yet. Because Evan had filed it backward, out of order, like he'd panicked and shoved it anywhere. That told me it wasn't something harmless. And the way he sprinted out of the house told me he knew he'd messed up. The pattern was forming. A secret conversation. A panicked brother-in-law. A legal envelope hidden in my kitchen. But the next shift was personal. Over the following days, Adrian became increasingly controlling around our son. Not in a loud, dramatic way. Quietly. Subtly. He insisted on picking him up from school even when he'd never done that before. He refused to let me see their group chats. One night, when I tried to tuck our son in, Adrian appeared in the doorway and said, "I've got it." No reason. No warmth. Just that territorial tone. And the moment I stepped back, I saw something flicker across my son's face, hesitation. Not fear of me. Fear of saying or doing something in front of Adrian. That's what broke me internally. Not enough to act recklessly, but enough to sharpen my focus to a razor's edge. It was Friday afternoon when I overheard Adrian on the phone. He was in the garage, voice hushed but anxious. I only caught the final sentence before he hung up. She can't know until the morning. Once she signs, none of this will matter. Sign. The word rattled through me like a warning bell. I didn't confront him. Instead, I stepped upstairs, closed my office door, and opened every spreadsheet, contract, and access log tied to the family business. If they were moving anything, money, shares, assets, decision-making power, it would ripple somewhere. But nothing looked off. No red flags. No missing funds. No strange authorizations. It didn't fit. Unless the paper he wanted me to sign wasn't financial. Unless it was something he needed my signature to legitimize. And that realization sent a chill through me that wouldn't fade. Because if Adrian and Moira were coordinating something they believed I'd refuse, something involving a lawyer, then whatever that envelope held at the founders' dinner wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the first domino. And I was about to find out exactly how far they intended it to fall. Back in the present, after that tense founders' dinner, Adrian barely spoke on the drive home. Our son fell asleep in the back seat, clutching his jacket sleeve over his wrist. Adrian kept one hand on the wheel and one pressed tightly against the pocket where he'd hidden the torn envelope. Every time the car passed under a streetlight, I caught a glimpse of his jaw clenching. When we pulled into the driveway, he finally broke the silence. "Don't overthink tonight," he said. "My family, they can be intense. You know how they are." I stepped out of the car. "What's in the envelope?" He didn't even bother denying it. "A formality. We'll talk in the morning." The thing about Adrian was that he'd always believed I played safe. Calm, agreeable, predictable. He had no idea that every word he chose so carefully for control only sharpened my resolve. Inside, I carried our son upstairs, put him in bed, and kissed his forehead. When I gently pushed his sleeve back to check the bruise, he stirred and whispered, "It was an accident." "Whose accident?" I asked softly. He paused. "Dad said not to tell." My chest tightened, but I steadied my voice. "You're not in trouble. You can always tell me anything." He hesitated, then shook his head again. I didn't push further. Not tonight. His safety wasn't a conversation, it was a plan. And plans require proof. Downstairs, Adrian was pacing the living room. When I entered, he stopped mid-stride. "Tomorrow," he repeated. 9 a.m. "Why not now?" I asked. "Because it's late. And you'll be emotional." "Emotional." He said it like a flaw. I gave him a calm nod, walked upstairs without another word, and quietly locked my office door behind me. There I replayed every clue: the overheard conversation in the warehouse, Evan's panicked behavior, the law office envelope, the bruise. All pointing toward something coordinated, something they expected me to sign blindly. But I didn't just want answers. I wanted evidence. And that's when Seed 2 landed. While scanning the shared family business cloud drive, I noticed a new folder, created 2 days ago, labeled simply Administrative Adjustments. It was locked, which wasn't unusual. But it was locked with a password I recognized, Moira's favorite phrase, "Stewardship first." I typed it. Only one file was inside. A PDF with a placeholder title, Draft, Transfer. And even though the file was encrypted, a small preview thumbnail showed part of the document header. Not enough to read anything, but enough to see one line clearly. Amended Parental Responsibility Agreement, Signatory Requirements. Parental responsibility. My heart stopped cold. This wasn't a business dispute. It wasn't a financial formality. They were planning something involving my child. Before panic could take hold, something in that document window blinked, a notification. The file updated. Someone else was editing it in real time. And when the username popped up, a single breath escaped me. E. Aldrich. Evan. He was involved deeper than I thought. In that moment, the stakes shifted. I wasn't just unraveling a scheme. I was potentially fighting for my role in my son's life. There was no room for fear, only clarity. Because once morning came and Adrian placed that paper in front of me, they would expect me to sign without resistance. And they would be wrong. Now I want to ask you, the viewer, something that I wish someone had asked me much earlier. Have you ever noticed tiny digital clues, shared files, odd messages, hidden folders, that revealed people plotting something behind your back? What made you realize it wasn't just paranoia but an actual plan? Tell me in the comments, walk me through what tipped you off and how you connected the dots. Because what I found next connected every dot for me. The draft file suddenly disappeared from the folder entirely. Deleted. Then a new message appeared in the audit log, a short line from the admin account. Final version prepared for signature. Prepared for signature. Tomorrow morning. I took a slow breath and turned off the monitor. I stayed up the entire night in the dim glow of my office, piecing together the shape of the trap without yet seeing the center. Adrian wanted control, Moira wanted compliance, and Evan wanted to impress them both. Somewhere between those motives was an official document with my signature line waiting. But I wasn't going to walk into their plan unarmed. So at 8:50 a.m., when Adrian knocked on my office door holding a freshly sealed envelope, I was ready, calm, composed, expression unreadable. "Time to sign," he said, stepping inside with the confidence of someone certain the game was already won. But games like this aren't won by confidence. They're won by evidence. And I was already on the hunt. Adrian laid the sealed envelope on my desk as if he were presenting a gift instead of an ultimatum. He sat across from me, straight-backed, composed, rehearsed. Everything about him said control. Everything about me said nothing at all, by design. "Open it," he instructed. I did. Slowly. Inside was a crisp stack of legal documents, clean formatting, blank signature lines, a notarization block waiting to be filled. My eyes went straight to the title. Joint Parental Restructuring Agreement. Every instinct inside me sharpened to a point. "This ensures stability," Adrian said, clasping his hands. "It streamlines decisions regarding our son so there's no confusion in the future." My family's lawyer prepared it. I skimmed the opening paragraphs. And the buried clause hit me like an electric shock. Section 4B, in the event of marital dissolution or temporary disputes, primary parental authority shall default to the father until further review. Default to him. Instantly. Automatically. No review until after. It was the kind of clause someone would only bury if they intended to use it. Soon. He thought he'd corner me. I closed the document calmly. "Why now, Adrian?" He exhaled long and slow, like he'd practiced this explanation in the mirror. "Because lately you've been unpredictable. Emotional. My family thinks, well, they think you might make impulsive choices that could confuse our son." Moira's fingerprints were all over that sentence. He leaned forward. "This is best for everyone. Just sign it. Let's avoid drama." Those words, avoid drama, were the family's favorite leash. I set the papers down. "I'll review it further." His tone tightened. "It's straightforward. Sign it." My silence was deliberate. Silence makes people show their hand. He stood abruptly. "Fine. You have until tonight." He left without another word, confident fear would do his work for him. As soon as the door shut, I pulled out my laptop. If they had prepared this document so carefully, then the proof of their intent had to exist somewhere. A trail. A clue. A misstep. The investigation began. I started with the family attorney's portal and scanned the activity logs, not for the document itself, but for anything adjacent. And there it was, a recently uploaded voice memo file labeled with a timestamp from 2 nights ago. It shouldn't have been visible to me, but someone on the legal team had stored it in the wrong directory. I clicked it. Moira's voice filled my speakers instantly. cold, sharp, unmistakable. Drafted exactly as I specified. The default authority must transfer immediately. If she hesitates or refuses, Adrian will pursue temporary removal citing instability. We need the paperwork ready before she realizes what's happening. My breath caught, but the recording wasn't over. A male voice, the attorney, responded, "And she won't see the hidden clause?" "She never reads the fine print," Moira snapped. "Adrian will keep her focused on the title. She signs, and everything becomes simple." Simple. They wanted to sideline me as a mother and then call it simplicity. But the memo gave me my first concrete evidence: intent, coordination, timing. I saved it to an encrypted drive instantly. But I needed more. One line in that memo echoed strangely. "Before she realizes what's happening." It was the same phrasing Adrian had used in the warehouse. So I dug deeper. The attorney portal showed another attachment, deleted, but still recoverable from the admin logs. A PDF titled, "Custody Contingency Plan, Aldrich Family Internal." I restored the deleted file. The moment it opened, my pulse hammered. Inside were timestamps and meeting notes documenting private discussions between Adrian, Moira, and Evan. And then came the proof I didn't expect. A still image from security footage, dated 3 days ago, showing Adrian gripping our son's wrist firmly in the driveway while Evan looked on nervously. The angle was grainy, but the bruise was visible. Under the image, a typed note. "Incident escalated during rehearsal discussion. Evan to ensure Mark is explained as accidental. Do not disclose to mother." Rehearsal discussion. They had practiced how to explain the bruise to me. My hands trembled once, only once, before I forced them steady. I copied the entire file. Saved it. Backed it up again. 3 different locations. This was no longer suspicion. It was documented, timestamped proof. At that moment, footsteps approached my office, soft, hesitant. "Evan." He peeked inside. "Hey." "Adrian wanted to make sure you were reviewing the papers." I looked at him, expression neutral. "I am." He nodded too quickly. "Good. Good. It's really for the best." He tried to leave, but guilt made him linger, his body turned toward the door, his eyes glued to the floor. And then, barely above a whisper, he said, "I didn't want to be part of this." That line anchored everything. He was wavering, and wavering people spill the most. "What exactly didn't you want to be part of?" I asked gently. He swallowed hard. "I can't. I shouldn't. They'll, just don't sign anything, okay?" He backed away. "Not yet." Then he fled. But what mattered most wasn't his fear. It was his warning. The trap was real. The proof was undeniable. And now I had enough leverage to end every part of their plan. What I needed next was timing. And the right moment was approaching faster than they imagined. By late afternoon, the house felt unnaturally quiet, like the pause before a storm hits the last window pane. Adrian's car was in the driveway. Moira's car was down the street. Evan's was parked crookedly, as if he'd arrived in a panic. They were all here. They were waiting. Good. I gathered every piece of evidence, the recovered files, the voice memo, the security still, on a single encrypted USB drive I slipped into my blazer pocket. Then I walked downstairs with steady steps, the kind that announced a conversation was about to change direction. They were in the living room, pretending to chat casually. Moira sat poised, one leg crossed over the other, hands folded on her lap like a queen awaiting tribute. Adrian stood behind the couch, arms crossed, projecting confidence. Evan lurked near the window, pale. As soon as they saw me, everything went silent. "Have you reviewed the documents?" Adrian asked, voice neutral but tight. "Yes," I replied. "And," he pressed. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked past all of them and placed the unsigned papers neatly on the coffee table. We should discuss a few things. Moira forced a gracious smile. Darling, these documents are standard. Mothers sign them all the time. It prevents chaos later. What kind of chaos? I asked softly. She blinked. Disputes. Emotional outbursts. Unpredictable behavior. She gestured vaguely at me. You know how stressful parenting can be. Emotion. Outbursts. Unpredictable. All the keywords they'd primed Adrian with. I sat down slowly. Before we talk about anything else, I want an explanation for the bruise on my son's wrist. Adrian stiffened. We told you, it was an accident. No, I said calmly. He told my child not to talk about it. Evan flinched. Moira lifted her chin. Children bruise. You're blowing this out of proportion. I looked directly at Adrian. Did you grab him? His jaw flexed. You're being dramatic. That was his answer. I nodded once. Then let me show you why I won't be signing anything. Adrian scoffed. You don't understand the document, that's all. Oh, I understand it perfectly. I reached into my blazer, pulled out the USB drive, and plugged it into the television's media port. Moira's face dropped. Evan whispered, "Oh God." The screen lit up with the recovered PDF, the contingency plan. Meeting dates. Legal notes. Custody shifts. Strategy. The timestamp. And finally, the security still, Adrian's hand gripping our son's wrist exactly where the bruise formed. Adrian stepped forward. Where did you get that? Your lawyer accidentally saved the file in the wrong directory, I said. Audit logs are very revealing. Moira's voice cracked. Turn that off. No, I said. The room held its breath. Then I played the second piece, the voice memo. Moira's voice boomed through the speakers. The default authority must transfer immediately. If she hesitates or refuses, Adrian will pursue temporary removal citing instability. Adrian lunged for the remote, but I picked it up first and put it in my pocket. Sit down, I told him. The authority in my voice shocked even him. He froze, then slowly sat. The memo continued. She never reads the fine print. She signs, and everything becomes simple. When it ended, silence collapsed over the room like a thick curtain. Adrian finally spoke, voice strangled. You're misunderstanding. No, I cut in quietly. I'm understanding perfectly. Moira tried again. You have no idea how badly this could reflect on the family if you overreact. There it was, the reputation threat. I leaned back, collected. Let me be very clear. You coordinated a legal trap to seize parental authority. You created a contingency plan involving bruise rehearsal. And you attempted to manipulate me into signing away my rights. I turned to Adrian. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's documented intent. His face flushed, panic rising beneath the pride he'd worn like armor. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. I won't go public. I won't involve law enforcement, yet. But only if you agree to the following. You will destroy the agreement. You will notify the attorney that the restructuring is void. And you will stay away from our son until a licensed counselor clears otherwise. Moira laughed once, sharp, bitter. You think you can dictate terms? I looked at her with calm precision. I already have. Then I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen, revealing the final leverage, a message drafted to the board of directors, attaching the voice memo and the PDF. A message I could send in one single tap. Adrian paled. His family's company, his legacy, would crumble under a scandal like this. Custody manipulation? Injury cover-up? Abuse of legal process? The board would freeze him out within hours. You wouldn't, he whispered. I met his eyes. Try me. He broke first. Always the ones who think they're in control do. Fine, he breathed. Fine. We'll withdraw everything. Moira spun toward him. Adrian. No. This is overreaction. It's done, he snapped, voice cracking under the weight of defeat. And that was the moment the balance of power shifted permanently. Because they all knew I had every piece of proof. And I wasn't afraid to use it. The fallout began the moment I walked out of that living room. Adrian followed me into the hallway, wringing his hands like a man watching his own empire smolder. He wasn't used to losing ground. He wasn't used to me setting terms. But he understood what he stood to lose if he pushed me even 1 inch further. I'll fix this, he said quietly. I'll tell the lawyer it's off. I'll talk to my mother. You'll do more than talk, I replied. You'll make it formal. Tonight. He nodded, defeated. Okay. I didn't respond. I simply walked upstairs, closed my office door, and finally let my breath shake, but only once. Because the moment I broke even a little, I heard soft footsteps behind me. My son peeked inside. Mom, he whispered. I knelt down. Yeah, sweetheart? He held out his arm. It still hurts a little. My heart clenched, but my voice stayed steady. I know. Thank you for telling me. I kissed the spot gently. Everything's going to be different now. Safer. He nodded, trusting me completely, and that trust was the strongest confirmation I needed. Whatever consequences came next, whatever rebuilding required, I was making the right moves. That night, Adrian sent the formal email to the attorney retracting all restructuring efforts, copying me so I could see the exact wording. He also scheduled an emergency appointment with a family counselor for himself. He didn't do any of this out of moral awakening, he did it because I left him no alternative. Moira, on the other hand, reacted exactly how I expected. She showed up at our doorstep at 9 the next morning, anger barely concealed beneath a polished exterior. You've humiliated my son, she hissed. And for what? A misunderstanding? A misinterpretation of documents you weren't emotionally stable enough to read correctly? Her projection was almost artistic. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Your plan wasn't just unethical, I said. It was dangerous. And you knew it. You're destroying this family's reputation. No, I replied carefully. I'm protecting my child. And I'm establishing boundaries that should have existed years ago. Her eyes flashed. I will not be cut out. You already did that yourself. Then I turned and walked inside, shutting the door on every manipulative tactic she'd honed for decades. That was the final moment she realized she would never control me again. In the weeks that followed, consequences rippled through their carefully maintained facade. The family attorney, facing malpractice implications, recused himself entirely. Evan avoided me, but I wasn't cruel, I knew he'd been dragged into this out of fear, not ambition. Adrian attended every counseling session, slowly confronting the pressure he'd absorbed from his mother for years. It didn't excuse anything he'd done, but accountability had to start somewhere. Most importantly, the board of directors of the family company implemented a new oversight rule. No legal restructuring or authority transfer could occur without strict external review and unanimous board approval. The policy was attributed to recent internal concerns. Everyone knew what that meant. Control slipped from the hands of those who abused it. And landed back where it belonged. 6 months later, the rebuild was visible, quiet but solid. Our home atmosphere changed first. Lighter. Calmer. No tension in the air. Our son smiled more. He slept better. He didn't pull his sleeve down anymore. I'd carved out new non-negotiables, weekly family check-ins, co-parenting boundaries with real consequences, and a rule that no major decision could be made without transparent documentation. But the clearest symbol of rebuilding came from something unexpected. A small bronze plaque I installed next to my office door. Clarity lives here. Not family. Not loyalty. Not tradition. Clarity. The one thing that had saved me when everything else was designed to blindfold me. I touched the plaque each morning before starting work. A ritual, a reset, a reminder. 1 year after it all unraveled, Adrian and I sat together at our son's school play. He didn't try to control anything. He didn't dictate. He didn't interfere. He stayed on his side of the parenting lane, consistently, respectfully. During intermission, he turned to me and said quietly, "Thank you for not sending those files to the board." I met his eyes. "Thank you for giving me no reason to." He nodded. He understood. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. But I was done giving anyone the benefit of doubt at the expense of my child's safety. This was the life we rebuilt. A life shaped not by fear or manipulation, but by decisive action. And if there's a lesson buried in all of this, it's simple. When someone tries to rewrite your role in your own family, you don't argue, you document. You prepare. And then you draw a line so clear it becomes part of the foundation beneath your feet. And once that line is drawn, you never step back behind it again.